morning. Welcome to the panel discussion today. We're a bit late, but we'll try to keep the introductions brief and start with the discussion. The discussion of it today is Let's Get Digital. It's a broad topic, and we'll hopefully try to create a helpful discussion for all of our panelists to understand what digital actually means first, and getting into more detail. So, quick intros. I have David Lochhead, who is the co-founder of Finlay and Company, a UK-based eyewear retailer. And then we have Abhishek Sudhakar, who is the director for sports, international brands, accessories and footwear at Myntra Jabong out of India, one of India's largest fashion marketplaces and now part of Walmart. And then we have Steve Evans, EVP of Own Brands from Fossil, and he's based out of Dallas. So guys, the topic itself, Let's Get Digital. It's a very vague and a broad category. So I think it'll be great if each of you spend a few minutes just talking through how do you define digital in the context of your business, right? So is there a specific strategy or a playbook that your organizations follow when it comes to digital? And if you could summarize that for us in terms of how it fits in with your overall strategy when it comes to digital. Actually, just one more thing, I forgot myself. I'm Mukul Bafana. I'm the CEO of Arvind Internet. We're one of Asia's leading omni-channel enablement companies. We work with brands and retailers in this region and the rest of Asia. So with that, David, could you talk a bit more about how do you define digital at Finlay, and what does that mean to you?
Sure. So as an eyewear brand, we've been on a really interesting journey over the last 18 months to 2 years, where we've pivoted from being 80% wholesale reliant to now being 87% direct to consumer. And so as part of that, we had this journey to really work out what platforms do we want to be on to enable the most seamless omni-channel experience. And so we're 47% online, and so we very much think of online as digital. But when opening our first store this time last year, there were various touch points to work through and understand, okay, how do we want digital to permeate through the customer experience? And so that word, customer experience, I think, is the buzzword in retail these days, and so we really wanted to think through from an end-to-end experience within eye care and eyewear, what is necessary, what makes it modern, what makes it exciting, but let's not get so far beyond what we're trying to do that we lose the customer in the journey.
Yeah.
So from an eye care perspective, we have all sorts of machinery and testing equipment that also falls under digital, but today I want to more think about digital as it hits the shop floor, and then also from an omni-channel experience.
Yeah, and in your category, eyewear in general, it's typically an offline try and buy experience. And on the other end, you obviously have category killers like a Warby Parker who've tried to kind of digitize experience. How do you fit in that spectrum, which is how do you ensure that you have the proper mix of the online, offline experience for your consumers?
It's a great question. I think really the only way to win longer term for our industry is to be both online and offline. Yeah. As you say, glasses, spectacles, historically are very much an offline business. I think the stats, depending on who you listen to, are around 97% of our whole industry is still offline, which if you compare to apparel is obviously considerably less digital. We've seen Warby Parker as a real trailblazer in the US. I think the fact that they raised so much cash at incredible valuations was inspiring. But the interesting deployment of those funds is that they started opening stores, and their retail income per square foot, being second only to Apple, meant that they've now rolled out, I think, 85 to 90 stores across the US. And so we're looking at a sort of online-offline model as the way to win. Our first store, so we're very small, but our first store has delivered really well in central London. We're based in Soho. Yep. And so we're looking to we're replatforming our website this year, and we're looking to do more stores. And so to answer the question, it's really a combination of both.
So cross-channel is the way to go in your business. Okay.
Absolutely.
Abhishek, you're effectively a network native when it comes to digital, right? I mean, it's Myntra Jabong, which is one of India's largest fashion marketplaces. Digital is part of your DNA. Yep. How do you define, it's again a broad word, how do you guys think about what's next for you in digital? Because the e-commerce part is easy. Yeah. How do you think about going forward, what the digital strategy should be as you think about the company?
So the way we look at it is basically put the product at the center of digital for us, right? So if you look at backward integration from the product, we've been trying to innovate on how do we use technology to disrupt the way products are made. Everything from design to manufacturing, cutting down manufacturing times, making sure that not really enhance design, but just making sure that design works from what the customer is looking at. And that's the kind of data that we have access to, being one of the largest players in India in terms of fashion, at least. On the forward side, of course, like David and Mukul have already pointed out, I think omni-channel is definitely the way to go. I think the biggest source of innovation for us is the fact that we're able to now try and deliver a seamless experience across offline, online, even brand.com websites to an end consumer who basically expects nothing less from the way they interact with the brands, right? I think that's where we are, and I don't know if digital is something that actually restricts itself to just online sales. I think digital is a lot more permeable in terms of how can we get the right kind of customer experience or a uniform customer experience to any customer based out of any geographical location and for any brand. For example, as a retailer, I think we're a channel to deliver the right brand messages, and I think Steve will talk more about that, but the right brand messages to the customer in a uniform way. That's probably how Myntra looks at it.
Great. Steve, over to you. Fossil, obviously a very well-known brand around the world, a lot of categories that you guys play in. Recently you had some news in the press about Google acquiring part of your R&D assets on wearables. So as a traditionally offline retailer, digital is still becoming a part of, it's a big part of your DNA going forward. And like we said earlier, it's a broad kind of word when we say digital, but you guys have done something unique in kind of redefining what digital means for your company. Could you explain to us how you guys think about it?
I think for digital, just to kind of back up a little bit, when we hear the term digital, sometimes people refer to it as social media, sometimes they're talking about search, sometimes they're talking about digital marketing, sometimes they're talking about e-commerce, which platform you're on. So it's gotten this really broad view of what people use to describe digital. I think what we've gotten to is actually starting to organize everything around customer experience and really thinking about that as the primary goal. And what that really implies is when you're looking at your channels, you are talking about breaking the walls between your channels. And that's probably a theme I feel like I've kind of heard here already coming up, is, if you talk about digital, does that mean you're talking about it separately from what you're talking about from offline? And just even saying online and offline sort of implies they're different things. And we're working really hard to bring them together under an idea called customer experience, which is truly an omni-channel idea. And is about making the channels seamless, and how do we serve the consumer where they want, how they want, when they want, and not worry so much about which channel they're specifically shopping in. So I don't know if that helped, but
yeah. No, so I think the common theme that all three of you are sharing is that it's not about just channels anymore, right? This equation of digital being omni-channel or channel-led, digital channel-led is no longer the case. All three were talking about customer experience and how you can make it more frictionless and easier for your consumers to shop. Could you guys, and this is sort of a free-for-all, could one of you guys talk about how do you take the theory behind it, which is, good digital retail or omni-channel retail is about understanding consumer needs, having the right journeys to solve those needs, and then building technology to power those journeys in that order. Can you guys cite some examples of how your companies have done this, taking a core need and being able to digitally solve it in a smarter way?
Yes, so I think the first example, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, is if you think of a simple example of something like buy online, pick up in store, it's a sort of a simple feature. It's something that consumers, we found, loved. But basically what that's giving them is the choice to buy it how they want it and pick it up where they want it. I think once we decide something like that is really important, you have to kind of then pull back the curtains and look at your technology and your infrastructure and say, is it organized to actually successfully deliver those? And I think that this idea, it's the same, we also started ship from store as an idea just to get product closer to the consumer, make sure that we could use every available piece of inventory in the marketplace is accessible, no matter where you shopped. Both of those are ideas that we implemented in the last year, which have been hugely successful and are informing what our technology strategies are.
So for our industry, eye care is quite a high engagement purchase. You maybe need a prescription, and there's a fair chance that you'll purchase on a specific day, maybe after a sight test, and then come back and pick up. And so one of the ways that we're looking to be completely integrated and have that richest customer experience is that whatever way the customer decides to interact with us, whether that's online, whether that's in-store, whether it's even picking up the phone and speaking to our customer care team, all of our team members have the sufficient information at their fingertips to make sure that that customer doesn't feel like they're being treated like they've gone through a channel, that actually we see them as that customer, and that we can tell them what they're looking to find out instantly, rather than say, oh, we need to transfer you to store, and that sort of thing.
Let's turn up the heat a bit more on some of these questions. A question for you guys that always comes on our minds of retailers is, if you think about digital as a broad category, and whether it's omni-channel or smarter digital experiences for your consumers, the underlying currency, the underlying brick to kind of lay down is the technology part. But what you get out of it is this thing called data, customer data, right? And there's a lot of data being generated, whether it's through the multiple channels that you sell through, your channel partners. But the one part that I think we struggle as an industry is to connect the customer, right, across all of our selling channels and partners. And so how do you guys think about this problem? Because part of it is, all of us speak the same language, which is unified experience, one customer, one journey. But the underlying data that helps us kind of serve customers better is still very fragmented. How do you guys think about the data parts of your consumer journeys, and how do you connect it in a smarter, stronger way? And I'll start this question with Steve, because you obviously are a multi-channel retailer, and you, for example, in India, you work with Abhishek's team quite closely. How do you think about the data challenges working with your channel and your primary channels, partners and primary channels?
Yeah, I mean, data is at the heart of knowing your consumer, understanding how they're going to behave and what they're going to do, and how to ultimately get them the product they need. So I think starting there, I think we've all been working towards collecting our own data. I think the next big wave is going to be, how do we actually share data to help each other win with our consumers and get them the right product. And I think, honestly, do I think we're doing it today? I don't. I think we're just beginning a journey of how do we share the right data to help each other. But I think there's a huge potential in this if we can figure out how to kind of break down the walls of just data. And it's not only with traditional, sort of e-com players. We find it with traditional wholesale partners. Everyone's very guarded with their information. And from a brand perspective, the challenge has been we're spending a lot of money on marketing and trying to spend it effectively. And if we can kind of share data, we can do that. We can make that work much, much harder for all of our partners.
Yeah.
So
Abhishek, you sit on a lot of data as Mintra Jabong. How do you
Yes, he does.
how do you share and give back?
Yeah, so I think on the data piece, right, like Steve and Mukul pointed out, I think the biggest challenge today is what kind of data and with who do you need to share it with. I think our biggest challenge is that, yes, we do sit on a lot of fairly precious data in terms of, I, for example, know how many people from which part of India browse for a single brand on a daily basis. So I would probably be able to tell Steve that out of all the customers in Delhi, we could get, these 100 customers search for a fossil watch on Myntra every day, right? And that could actually help him sharpen his marketing or his targeting or, all of the investments that you put in behind building the brand. I think the bigger challenge, however, is how do we make sure that it's a synergic partnership? I'm not saying that we should not share data. Of course, there are some ethical lines behind, sharing actual customer data with any partner, for that matter. And I think we've got laws around that. But in terms of just big trends, in terms of big cohorts, in terms of big, profiles, in terms of big, workable, actionable consumer segments, I think that is something that we've already started doing. We've actually partnered with Fossil, for example, and with quite a few other big brands around the world in terms of a product that we've developed called Water. So what Water does is basically, it's an AI-led product that allows you to look at large trends in the product industry across products. So if you want to look at apparel, it'll tell you globally and in India, these are the kind of apparel that sell basis what has already been selling on a Myntra Jabong, what's been selling on multiple other platforms around the world. It also picks up a lot of social cues. So for example, very recently, we saw an example where minimalistic watches, right, made a huge comeback to the market, and nobody saw it coming till it actually hit. And I think some of them actually emerge on social channels a lot earlier than a trend becomes a trend. And this whole tool helps you recognize that. And that input we actually give to our partners like Fossil, right? So they are able to develop that into the right product. Of course, we stand to gain because as soon as our brand partners become more efficient in the product life cycles, the retailer becomes more efficient in their product life cycle. So I think those kind of synergic partnerships actually work for us.
David, anything to add there?
Yeah, just a quick thought, and going back to our strategy around 3 channels, wholesale, online, and in store. If you came to one of our stockists, so maybe Barney's in the US or Boutique One here in Dubai, I don't know very much about you. You could have bought my sunglasses and be wearing them around. However, if you've bought online or come in store, I have a much richer picture. And so I think there's challenges from a wholesale model, and that's why the direct-to-consumer move has been part of the reason why it's been so pivotal for us.
Yep. Part of getting digital right, obviously, there's a technology part to it in terms of what platforms, the technology you invest in. But a lot of getting ROI out of digital ends up being around the operational aspect of running your business, right? And a big part of that, obviously, is the way your organizations are structured. As you think about your digital strategies and how you're creating better customer experiences, how do you think about the org implications, both in terms of how are you set up to be able to ingest technology and trends into your organization, make sense of it, and being able to kind of roll it out and see real ROI out of it? This question first is for Steve. From a Fossil point of view, you mentioned that the old days were having siloed teams of your stores and your channel partners and your own e-commerce vertical. How is this thinking evolved in terms of organization structure at a brand like Fossil?
Yeah, so I think in the beginning I mentioned we actually recently reorganized around customer experience. And the reason we did that was to solve this problem. It's interesting when you look at building an organization on different structures, what we did is we also built technology underneath to support individual structures. So to take a really simple example, it wasn't uncommon for us to have a POS system that didn't allow us to collect the kind of data that we needed in order to inform our marketing strategy. Just as a sort of a simple example. So by organizing a customer experience team who looks at literally every decision we make about any kind of experience-related idea, whether it's going to be a new feature we want to add to like buy online, pick up in store, whether the IT team is actually talking about buying a new technology, even if it's seemingly unrelated, we force ourselves to sit down together and actually say, does this actually work fluidly together? And it's been hugely helpful in terms of us making better, smarter, and most importantly, probably cheaper technology decisions than we were in the past.
Yeah. Abhishek, the converse question for you, which is, you're a technology and product-heavy company, right? And obviously, a big part of your tech function is to think about the roadmap and the technology that could be relevant in the future.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of R&D happening in the background with your product and engineering teams.
Yes.
How do you then start taking some of this stuff that they're working on and realize sort of the value in it, which is to actually start implementing it, working with your partners like Fossil to kind of push them to start using it and really creating ROI out of the R&D that you're doing in digital?
So I think,
and if you have any specific examples where you're working with partners that really help.
Yeah, so I think in terms of just the way we are structured, yes, we are a tech company that does fashion. So a lot of people look at Myntra Jabong as a fashion company. We are not. We are actually fundamentally a tech company. 90% of all of the things that we do on our app are more tech-enabled than product or fashion-enabled. We could sell anything we wanted tomorrow using the same tech, and that's fundamentally where we are able to disrupt the way we are delivering experience to the customer.
Yeah.
That being said, I think the way we work backwards on the 3-year horizon is we actually have tons of customer problems to solve today. To name a few, we've still not solved the size and fit problem in India or globally. I don't know if anybody's really solved the size and fit problem for people who shop on e-commerce, right? Every day we sell millions of garments 30% of that comes back as returns, right? Our average return rates are not low. We see that as on one side, yes, having returns is good, but on the other side, how do we really solve for it using tech? So we've built a lot of AR-led products, something like a shoe finder. So what it does essentially is that it allows you to picture the shoe on your feet as it would look when you wear it. Now, the challenge there is, unless we work with a brand partner, we are not able to create a 3D model of that shoe for it to look a certain way on your feet, right? So that's where the brand partner kind of comes in and helps us get a coherent tech product out to the customer to solve a customer need. The other few products that we've actually, in fact, image search, for example, right? Now, in fashion, social fashion is a huge deal. Everybody wants to know what the biggest celebrities or the biggest influencers in our country are wearing. There is no way to click and find out. Like if I was to see a big celebrity walking, in a suit, I would love to find out what that suit was, but there's no way for me to find out, right? What we've tried to do is we've tried to see how we can make image search a big deal on our platform itself. So if I click a photo of myself wearing this suit, it'll actually match that to every suit on the platform that looks that way across brands. Because we don't take a brand view, we just take a category view on that. And so there are 2 or 3 of those big ideas that we have executed so far. I think the way we look at the next 3 years is what are the biggest problems to solve today for the consumer. We've got enough of them that we haven't solved yet. And then figure out how to put the tech bandwidth and the tech resources behind solving those problems. Eventually, a lot of these evolve into products that are future ready, right?
So let's talk about the biggest buzzword of it all, which is ROI, right? This is something that everybody talks about, which is there ROI in digital? Does it make sense for us as a company to invest? Is it now? Is it later? How do we realize ROI? Us working with brands and retailers in the region, that's the first question that comes up when we talk to leaders, which is, we can do all of this, but how does it help us? Can you help us quantify and measure this? David, to start with you, you're a younger company. You're based out of the UK, but you're selling in other parts of the world. For you to make a decision, both in terms of time, resources, technology vendors, is a commitment, especially at this stage of your business. How do you think about the ROI in digital? Is there a way that, do you actively think about it? Is there a way you measure it?
It's a great question. We're probably not as scientific as we could be. One of the main lenses we look through is what the sort of level of impact it has on our broader customer base.
Yeah.
So is it that 5% of our users are going to experience, or is it actually that everyone who comes to our website or store? One interesting example and challenge that we're working through at the moment is with our photo booth in store. It makes it very easy to take a picture with 4 different pairs of glasses that can then be shared by text or email or socially. And the level of use is quite low.
Yeah.
But when it is used, it's often put on social media. And what if we have influencers in store who then tag it, it has our brand front and center, and then it's suddenly gone to 100,000 of their followers? It's hard to quantify the value of that to us. And so I think those 2 lenses, sort of specifically how many people are using it, but then sort of how's it improving the experience.
Yeah. And Steve, the other side of ROI is obviously the investment, right? Investing in technology, let alone change management, is not cheap. You're working with global brand partners when it comes to technology. There's an argument to be made that sometimes decision-making in organizations is often led by technology teams or vendor kind of management teams that have an incentive to invest but don't see the R side of it, right? One organization sees the returns, the other sees the investment, and these budgets are typically separate. In this sort of new world of barriers breaking down between channels in your organization as you have more of a horizontal experienced team, how do you, is your return commensurate for the investments that you guys are making, or do you actually look at the I side critically more than just the R side? How do you ensure that you're working with the right partners, the right investments, rather than kind of spending and upgrading every 2 years?
First of all, we do measure return on everything.
Okay.
We have a CFO, and he asks me a lot of questions. So I think we do a pretty rigorous process of taking any kind of new idea through a kind of a return process. The big question we come up with is what is the right time horizon for the return, particularly with technology. And there's two things. One, we usually do look at a slightly longer term. The second thing that I think has really changed is when we're looking at technology, I think we used to look at it like we'd buy it and it'd be good for forever, or for as long as we were all in our jobs. And I think we think of it more now like a store. Once you build a store out, you're going to have to spend money refreshing it and remodeling it. And we sort of feel the same way about technology. And we've started budgeting it a little bit differently, which has led us to, I think, a healthier review of the investments. But then again, I do go back to everything does have an expected return. So if we're implementing a new technology that's supposed to enable our mobile capabilities globally, we do expect, an increase in sales that goes with it.
Does the I hit your P&L?
Pardon?
Does the investments, does that actually directly hit your P&L in the way you think about
it
the
depends.
ROI?
It's a little bit of both. We do some as capital expenditures and some as that hit the P&L.
Yeah.
And usually that's accounting that takes us there.
Yeah. Great. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. So I want to take a pause and open up questions from the audience. We don't seem to have any questions out there. Yeah, there's one in the back.
Yes, hello, my name is Anurag from Leali Jewelry. My question is for Finlay. Is your business model similar to Warby Parker?
Great question. We try to take some of the learns from Warby. We feel that there's a number of competitors in the market who lift their model exactly. So some key areas where we're different, we actually offer a multi-brand experience in stores. So we anchor our store with Finlay, but we have 12 other independent brands in store alongside. We also try and offer a superior level of eye care. So, for example, we do contact lenses and we have slightly longer eye test appointments. So there's some inspiration there, absolutely, but we're also looking to differentiate in various ways.
Question in the back.
Hi, Kevin Gill from Start Design. I just wanted to ask the two gentlemen with their own stores whether they're looking at stores differently in the future in terms of the purpose of those stores and the metrics that they'll use to measure them against.
Future of stores. How do you think about the future store and you said the metrics to gauge success of stores?
So it's a great question. I think one of the pivotal shifts we made is we're no longer thinking of our stores as just a transactional site. I think it's the way we've sort of evolved with e-commerce. I think we've quickly discovered that with partners like Myntra, it goes beyond e-commerce. It's about marketing. It's about search. There's other elements. We think about the stores the same way. So what kind of services are we offering? What kind of experiences are we creating in the store? Are we making it easier for consumers to buy, return, do literally whatever they want? We absolutely, and I feel like there's this sort of resurgence of interest in actual physical retail now. And part of it is to actually get away from technology. I know it sounds weird. We opened a store and we put service in the front of the store instead of product.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things we saw was traffic jumped 20%. And the services we were offering were really simple. It was we can change your battery, we can fix the links on your watch, we could teach you to use your smartwatch. It was just sort of help and assistance. Yeah. And I think of your store now as a warehouse, as a service center, as a place to actually do any kind of transaction, whether it's buying or returning.
And Abhishek, I want you to also kind of jump on this question only because, and you're doing something unique with the Mango play, and he'll talk a bit more about this, but how does this question relate to the Mango stores? Because unlike Steve's problem, which is to take a largely non-digital offline store and making it digital ready for the future.
Yep.
You guys are actually creating digital first stores. So if you talk a bit more about that and how do you measure success versus a traditional store when it comes to that setting?
So I think on the whole store space, so just to give you background, Myntra handles the offline stores for Mango in India, right? We are the first global, first player who's gone online to offline, I think, for a brand like Mango. And it's actually given us an opportunity to do two things. One, we've got great insights and data in terms of what kind of or what areas or what pin codes in India actually search for mango. It actually gives us a lot of intel on where to open our next store. So we are actually, even at the opening of stores level, we are using data to kind of drive that, which just automatically ensures that there's a higher rate of success. In the stores itself, we've piloted this concept called the endless aisle, which is essentially that in most stores, the biggest problem is inventory management, right? And for us to ensure that the customer who walks into a store, who's ideally a high intent customer, does not walk away without finding what they're looking for, we actually assist them by telling them that, hey, if you find a dress that you like, you don't find the size that you want at the store, we then show them an iPad that they're able to choose the size that they want from, and we then deliver it to their house within 5 hours. And then we also make sure that when they want to return the dress, they can always come to the nearest store to return the dress and probably exchange it for something that they want to buy online. So I think that whole experience of how do we ensure that the experience is uniform across offline and online, we have piloted with Mango so far. And I think the future is basically there. I definitely don't think offline retail is a slowing trend. I think everybody, like Steve had said, is bringing back focus to offline retail because it's a great place for customers to come and experience a brand. All we need to do is use data and technology to kind of enhance that experience.
David, you want to jump in? The one question that the gentleman asked, which we still haven't covered, is how do you measure success from a metric point of view in the new store versus your, Jim Roth, basically your sales per square foot or your year-over-year growth that we typically measure in stores? Is there a different way of measuring the future store?
There's one thing I'd like to point out with metrics, and I think that's the impact that it can have on your digital, your online transactions. So there's an example cited in the US where wherever this brand rolled out stores, and they rolled out 50, they would see massive leaps in that state of their online sales, and the store team members were getting frustrated that they were incentivized on sales based only on store. Customers would come in, try on, and as we've talked about, they don't necessarily differentiate between store and online, go home and purchase online. And so actually that brand rethought about how they work out incentive plans, and so stores became a key driver for online as well. So we've seen that this year with opening the store. Customers will come in and they've already researched and they know it's between 2 frames. Likewise, a lot of tourists come through our store in London, and then we see transactions from different parts. So I think that integration of online and offline from a metrics perspective is important.
So I'll also spend a couple of seconds on this. When we work with brands and retailers, now we're working about 5,000 stores across the region. One of the first things we do is to rethink, like you said, what success should be for the store. If you think of a truly cross-session, cross-channel journey, and if your job is to create, one, the right connecting points between all of your channels, and second, to ensure that the logic continues across sessions and channels for a customer, then you almost have to turn the success metric on its head and think about what you do in the online world, which is sort of a revenue per session or a revenue per impression kind of metric, which is the store is an integral part of the overall buying journey for a customer. And therefore, part of the success metric in store has to be either a margin or a revenue per interaction rather than just a sales per square foot. And that's where we really push retailers to kind of think about how the guy in store can influence your overall purchase journey. So I think those retail metrics will change, and hopefully we'll see a lot more adoption coming from top retailers like you guys.
And if I could add a little bit to that, I think one of the things, we use all the traditional measurements, that everyone uses. In addition, we've actually combined our e-commerce and physical stores together and just kind of look at the overall math. And it's still a return on invested capital in the end. But when you look at your investments, that's why we sort of organized around how do we make the right investment decisions? And that's why we combine those teams so that we can actually sit down and say across all of our investments, are we making the right one for the whole ecosystem, not necessarily for, a channel specific.
Good question. One last question, anybody in the audience? Just one up here.
Hi, my name is Maha from Pinky Goat. I would like to ask a question to Stephen. My question is, I know you are all from big businesses. What's your advice for young businesses who want to invest some money in marketing in 2019? What you will say, this is the place where you should spend money, and this is where it's going to make a big difference in your businesses? Because I know last year we've talked a lot about influencers and What do you say in 2019? Where is it going?
Good question. From an investment standpoint, there's a couple things that I would probably highlight. Number one is you have to prioritize. You have to win. It's better to win in one place than try and win all over the place. It's really easy from a marketing standpoint to get pulled in a lot of different directions. The second thing that we've spent a lot of time on last year is moving from what I'd call quantity to quality. Where are you getting quality engagement in your spend? It's really easy to chase influencers. I think we have a fully tiered influencer strategy up to sort of major celebrities. And what we have found is it's really surprising when you look at who performs. And it usually has to do with the level of engagement of their specific following. We still do use some of it, but we've had more success with more localized and specific influencers than we have with the sort of mega celebrity. Those are hugely expensive, and you get a lot of interest, you get a lot of likes, but you don't get a lot of activity. So we're sort of doubling down on kind of really getting segmented, and I guess that's the last piece I would add is how do you really learn who your consumer is and start talking to one group as much as you can versus trying to sort of spread out who you're trying to reach. I don't know if that helped.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, guys. We're out of time, unfortunately. Thanks for being a great audience. And David, Abhishek, and Steve, thank you.
Thank you.